Hey YouTube, it's Jake here and we're bringing you another one. Stay tuned to the very end to get some really good examples of what I'm about to talk about. And don't forget to like, subscribe, push that notification button because we're going to keep bringing this stuff to you. And make sure to comment below what you think we should talk about next in this Let's Talk What's the Difference edition. Oh yes. And don't forget to get yourself a coloring book now because it is ready to be ordered. If you go to jcutt.com, link in the description below. So this is Let's Talk What's the Difference. And what is the difference between self-taught and learning on your own? So people like to say, oh, I'm self-taught, or are you self-taught? And I understand that it's an easier thing to say. It sounds cooler than learning on your own, right? Or did you learn that on your own? Like, yeah, that sounds corny. And I understand why self-taught is just an easier, broad stroke. But learning on your own and self-taught are two different things. You can't say you're self-taught if you learned it on YouTube, okay? That's not self-taught. YouTube taught you. Now, what you can say is, I learned it on my own, which means you found that information, you went and searched it on YouTube, you went and found that information, and you learned it on your own. So let me break that down a little bit more. Now, school, and I'm talking about any type of school, not just college, school, trade schools, an institute, high school, middle school, elementary school, preschool. Schools, they're teaching you. Someone is teaching you fundamentals. They're teaching you certain things that you would never have known had you not come to school. In other words, they're teaching you things that you would not be able to find or would take a longer time finding on your own that they can just sit down and teach you. 1 + 1 = 2. Researching that at, 4 years old would be a little bit complicated. So they teach you that. They just flat out tell you, and then you learn it from a teacher, a professor, an educator. Okay. So when you go on YouTube or you ask a friend some type of thing or knowledge or something to learn, that is learning on your own. And what that means is you went out, you did the research, you seeked the information. A school didn't tell you directly what those things were. You went out, found that information, and then applied it to yourself. Even though someone taught you, you had to gather that on your own. You had to do that research. School did the research for you. When they teach you history in school, someone had to do that research, and then you are learning that research. When they teach you science, someone had to discover that for you, and then you did that. You didn't go out and seek that information. So that's why when you say, I learned it on my own, it's better to just say, oh yeah, I learned it from YouTube. Or yeah, my friend taught me, blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying, I taught myself or I learned on my own. But if you do say I learned on my own, it's not too bad in comparison to I taught myself. Because you're not self-taught, YouTube taught you. Then, what is self-taught? If you learn from observation, that is self-taught. If you learn from personal experience, that is self-taught. If you learn when no one is around, that is self-taught. So let me give you some examples. The examples that you need to really understand what I mean by that. So I'm gonna give you a few examples. So let's start with something simple like learning how to ride a bike. You wanna learn how to ride a bike, okay? Now, if your dad literally puts you on a bike and shows you how to balance, shows you how to pedal the wheels and how to have balance, that is not self-taught. That is not learning on your own. You learned that from your dad. Your dad taught you how to ride a bike. However, no one taught you, didn't know how to ride a bike, never learned it. You're 30 years old and still trying to figure it all out. So you're like, you know what? I need to learn how to ride a bike. I'm going to go to YouTube. That is not self-taught. That is learning on your own. Okay. You went out. You gathered the information, you learned how to do it without someone coming up to you and saying, this is how you do it. You had to go and figure it out and then take the time to study it. But the best way to say it would be, yeah, I had to learn on my own. I went to YouTube and I had to figure it out. So then you're giving credit to YouTube, or you're giving credit to the friend that you called, or you're giving credit to the person who taught you through some type of source. But then you're also giving credit to the fact that you had to go out and do the research on your own. So that's why you're going to say, yeah, I learned it on my own, but I had to do the research. Then the true self-taught in this example would be literally going, buying a bike, getting on the bike, and doing it until you don't fall off. That is self-taught. I got on the bike. I fell a few times. I was riding. I fell again. I was riding. I had to hold on. I bought some training wheels. I figured it out. And then eventually I was able to ride a bike. That's self-taught. Nobody taught you. You just saw other people riding bikes and you're like, okay, I see what they're doing. I think I can do the same thing. And eventually you were able to figure it out to the point where you became an expert at that activity or that thing. You get the difference. So let's give it a profession, right? Let's say nail artists, right? We have people who do nails all the time, right? And they're amazing. I've seen a lot of videos of people doing nail, and it's an art. Actually, my mom does nails. This just popped in my head. Why don't you click right here to her Instagram? You can see all the beauty things that she does. Check it out. But just to use an example, right? If you go to cosmetology school, you're not learning on your own. You're not being self-taught. They are teaching you not only nail art and beauty, but they're also teaching you hair and other things as well, right? So you go to a school and they teach you how to do nails. So that's one thing. But then if you're like, you know what? I can't afford to go into cosmetology school. I'm just going to research it on my own. I'm going to go to YouTube, or I'm going to ask my friend who knows how to do it, or someone who already went to school who has a lot of tips. Let me ask them. Okay, now you're learning on your own. You're not going through a school. You're not going through a system. You're taking the time to gather all that knowledge that school would have provided, but you're gathering that knowledge and now you're going to learn it on your own. People are teaching you, but you're learning it on your own, right? The last one would be self-taught. That would be, I'm not necessarily going to YouTube. I'm not going to a college, but I'm just going to buy some nail stuff. I'm going to buy the stuff, and I'm just going to take the time and practice doing it on myself, doing it on my friends and families until the point I get really good at it where I can say, oh, I taught myself. You see 3 different ways of learning here, and self-taught and learning on are 2 different things. So to compare it to myself, right? To put it in my perspective, right? So yes, I did get my foundation. All my foundation of art I got from college, right? That's my foundation. I learned most of what I know about art from school. So someone had to teach me the fundamental. However, when it comes to my 3D work, yeah, I did learn a little in school. I would say maybe like 8% of what I know about 3D, I learned in college. I had to learn on my own 3D work in the sense of I had to go to YouTube, look at Blender tutorials, look up different tutorials that I can learn, that I can apply to the little bit I already knew to really branch out, right? Looking at different books, looking at different things, talking to different people. I had to gather that information and learn it on my own because I couldn't afford and just to literally go to school for only 3D. And also that wasn't the only thing I needed to learn in school. So the little bit I learned wasn't enough to say I learned it in school. And then finally, I would say my style is self-taught. No one taught me my style. I just gathered it over time through experience. And over time, I became efficient with my own style. So I taught myself my own style. And then the basics of just drawing in general. I was born liking and knowing how to draw. So it just naturally was a part of me, which means no one taught me how to draw. I just started drawing. So that was self-taught. So I feel like it's a good balance to have all of those things, but just to know where it's coming from so that you can really pinpoint how you're learning a certain task, a certain technique, a certain art, a certain whatever you're doing, really. This is not like a accurate definition. This is just how I feel it means. I'm sure there's a more accurate definition about this stuff, but this is just how I feel when it comes to self-taught and learning on your own. And I would say there's really nothing wrong with either one. I don't see any difference in the sense of what's better, what's worse. I do think you should have a mix of all of it, because if you're only always taught, then you won't develop your own style. If you're only taught by a professor or by a teacher, then you won't develop your own style, your own look. But then at the same time, if you only ever self-teaching, you're gonna miss a lot of things, a lot of secrets, a lot of tips that other people have figured out already. And you're gonna find yourself being like, I took the longest way to do that one thing when it was this one button, this one way that I could have did, that someone or a group of people already figured out. So that's why it's good to have a mix of learning so that you can really create a great deal of art or create a great deal of content that you're putting out there in the world. So that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really like this subject. I have a lot more Let's Talks, a lot more What's the Difference. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, push that notification button, because we're going to keep bringing this stuff to you. That's it. Go ahead and learn some new stuff, y'all. Go ahead and learn some new stuff. What are you doing? I know you're not about to leave without liking or sharing or something. I know you see that red button. You better subscribe to my channel. See you soon.